I don't have it on here.
I need it. I'll be so nice just to let us use what seems to be the only copy in the courtroom.
That's the front area is highlighted, but I don't mind.
If you don't mind, thank you very much. If that assists you, then tell us the type cases in the courtrooms that you have presented that work in.
I've worked on 59 criminal trials so far, 21 civil trials, and I've done declaration or testified in 20 of those.
Okay. So approximately 100 presentations, whether by declaration or testimony?
Oh, 59 was the total, or 59 plus 21 civil.
Okay. And you give the court then an overview of the type of criminal cases that you've been involved in?
Trying to figure out shooting incidents. I've worked with the Department of Justice in police officer involved shootings, stabbings. It varies quite a bit.
Okay. In each of those 59 cases then, did you take on the information that we've talked about, gather together data, and then make a graphic presentation, whether it's an animation or poster type presentations?
Yes.
And are we now talking about the spectrum of murder cases and aggravated batteries? I mean, do you know the charges, or were you just told the information?
Sometimes I've been told more detail. Sometimes I'm just given the evidence and I do creation from the evidence.
Within that context, let's focus on the 59 cases. How much or what percentage of that would you have worked on behalf of the defense, and what percentage on behalf of the prosecution?
100% on the defense. Okay. But that doesn't, some of that has also to do with defense of police officers in police officer involved shootings.
And if you would explain to the court what you mean by that and what cases you handled in that regard.
If the Department of Justice has a police officer that is a civil case is brought against him, or a shooting occurred, then I've done work with them on doing reconstructions on that, also assisting them in court in the presentation of their material.
Okay. Again, focusing for a moment on the criminal cases, have you actually presented testimony in court in any of those 59 cases?
Yes. In about 8 presented personally, or had my material presented?
Had your materials presented after you've been qualified?
Yes, pretty much all 59.
Okay, maybe just give some flavor to the court as to what courts you presented to, and then we'll talk about whether or not actual testimony was required.
I've been qualified as an expert in Placer County, Alameda County. I've got
What was the first county?
Placer County.
Can you spell that?
Placer. I got about 16 counties here that.
And those are all in California, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If you would, just for the record purposes, advise when you're talking about the counties, are these counties in which the courts of that county have authorized you to testify as an expert? Where you've actually presented or had your information presented to a court where it was qualified to be good information to be presented?
All the courts where my information has been presented, it's all been qualified. I've never been denied.
If you would list through the counties in California then, and do it slow enough so the court reporter can get it down, and there may be some need for spelling. Just want to make sure it's a record.
Okay. Placer County, Alameda County, Contra Costa County, San Bernardino County, Sacramento County, Los Angeles County, Napa County, Fresno County, Solano County, Solano, Yolo County, San Francisco County, Riverside County, Stanislaus County, Stanislaus, San Mateo, Santa Clara, Orange County, Santa Cruz, and El Dorado.
Have you ever testified in Florida before?
No.
Have you testified outside of California before?
No.
How long have you actually had the motion suits that you talked about a moment ago?
Since 2008.
And in those counties that you've testified, those counties, did you testify in each one of those counties, or was your information you created presented in those counties?
Information that it was both.
Okay.
My information was through either being as an expert witness testifying in court or a declaration, because sometimes the material that I create can be testified to by another expert, like a ballistic expert or a medical expert. Or
Do I take it that in certain cases you might create the animation or the graphic, and then that is admitted by what you call declaration, we may call affidavit, such that the underlying graphic is brought to court even without you having to come in live and testify?
yes, I just speak to the accuracy of the creation.
Okay. Have you actually testified in court concerning the accuracy and the methods used to create the animations or the graphics?
Yes.
And if you would advise the court, as best you can, what counties first? And I'm going to ask you, to the best of your recall, what cases and types of cases you've testified to in court. You want to go through them one at a time, or however you want to best present that?
I don't have a listing of exactly which counties
Just from your memory, what cases have you testified to in court? And what type of cases?
All the ones that I've testified to in court have been criminal trials.
So give the court then an example of some of the cases that you've testified to, and what animation you presented, and what you testified to regarding it.
There was one in Placer County. It was about 4 months ago. I testified in that on doing the shooting reconstruction, and that was to determine the position of the person shot and the position of the person shooting, and then what order of the shots that occurred and what position they were in when they were hit.
And was that one of the examples you gave us a moment ago?
No, this is another example.
And did you testify in that court?
Yes.
Were you qualified as an expert in this area of the creation of and presentation of graphics and animation?
Yes, I was qualified as an expert, and the motion capture suit was also accepted.
Okay. Another case where you testified in this regard?
There was one in Contra Costa County, the one where I was trying to determine the position of the person of the 3 shots when he was shot in the car. I was able to determine that there was only 1 shot through the window, and then the other 2 shots were outside of the vehicle.
And was your testimony, were you qualified as an expert to give that testimony in that court?
Yes, I was.
One more, if you would, about another case where you testified in court and the basis for it.
There was a couple down in Moreno Valley, down in Southern California. There was 2 of them actually. One of them was a person was inside a house. They were threatening suicide. They were chatting to somebody saying they were going to kill themselves. Police police officers responded, and they were waiting at the corner of a garage, asking him to come out. One of the officers was looking out at the street because people were starting to come around. The other officer was looking into the doorway. So what I needed to do in that case was determine who shot what, which officer did the shooting, and also the position of the person that was in the house. In my reconstruction, the person in the house said that he was on the floor in the kitchen the entire time. He was charged with 2 counts of attempted murder on a police officer. I was able to show that he was in the house the entire time because of the angle of the door when the bullets hit. The first police officer said that the person came out and pointed a gun at him. So he started firing. He fired 3 shots. His partner turned around and just started firing, shot the partner in the elbow, and continued firing into the doorway. I was able to show which shots came first, the 3 shots, and what position the door was in. And then the second series of shots, what position the door was in at that time, and able to show that there was no way somebody could have come through the door when those shots went off, because there was such tight space outside the door. If he was outside the door, he would have been hit. He wasn't hit, and there was no way for him to go in and out of the door, so he had to be in the...
Was that testimony then accepted in that court?
Yes.
And did you actually give evidence or testimony before the court or the jury in that case?
Yes.
Of the 59 cases that you were involved in on the criminal side, we'll talk about civil in a moment, but of those 59 cases, have there been other cases where you've been attempted to be qualified as an expert for the underlying graphics or animation where you were failed to be qualified as an expert?
No.
In all 59 then, either by affidavit or declaration or testimony, you were able to give your testimony in regard to what you created?
Declaration or testified was 20 cases.
Okay.
So in all of those cases, I've never been disqualified. I've been qualified in all of them.
Was the experience you had on the civil side similar, the other cases that you've talked about?
Those were mostly information designed for the attorneys for presenting their case to the jury.
Were there any of those cases on the civil side where it actually went all the way to trial testimony, where you gave testimony before a court or a jury?
Not in the civil trials.
Just on those in the criminal that we've already talked about?
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk a moment then about the Zimmerman case, and advise the court then what you did and how you first became involved in this case.
First became involved at towards the end of April. I initially had a conversation in August, but my first meeting with the attorneys was towards the end of April.
We had talked in August of 2012, correct?
Yes.
And then you went through a medical condition that sort of took you out of sorts for several months?
Yes.
Okay. That's all resolved?
We'll see.
Okay. And now you're back to work, and we talked again, was it April of this year?
Yes.
Okay. And what information did you then gather and review? Well, first, what task were you given as far as work on behalf of this case?
The scope of work
Yes.
was to do a reconstruction of the scene with the information that we had, and creation of an animated timeline.
Okay. And what information, was that something within your qualifications?
Yes.
Is that similar to what you have done in these other cases that we've talked about, both the 59 criminal cases and the 20 or so that either live testimony or declaration testimony was given?
Yes. There's not a lot of opportunity, though, to have live audio during the occurrence.
So
So
this is-
that was different in this case where we're able to have work audio into it with the 911 call.
Somewhat unique because we had actual audio recreation or audio evidence, real-time evidence available for you to use in your recreation.
Yes, it helps you with the timeline.
Okay. Similar, I guess, to when there's a security video camera that exists and you have some of that information that makes it that much more accurate.
Yes.
Video surveillance did not exist in this case, though.
No.
So this was within the area of your expertise where you've been qualified before to create this type of graphic and animation?
Yes.
So what information did you then gather or was given to you to assist you in the work that you've done?
The discovery from the district attorney's office, photographs, coroner reports, police reports, audio from the 911 calls. There was also investigation or questioning at the police department of witnesses.
Depositions?
Depositions, yes. Also photographs that they took of the scene, and then also total station data that they, from their measurements.
Was there any information that you needed in order to create the animation or the graphics that you did not have available to you?
Use of the motion capture suit at the scene, that wasn't available to me. So I made 2 visits to the scene.
Okay. So in effect, you came back, once you had the information and the foundation for the animation or the recreation, you then came here to utilize the motion capture suits?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall when that was done approximately?
Second week in May.
And explain to the court then what you do with that and who did it and how you assure accuracy in that regard.
To assure accuracy, that's where it's good that I can interact with the suits at the scene, because if there's a slope or other physical characteristics of the scene, you catch that in the movements of the person that's walking over the surface.
In this case, was there any concern that you had with the data that was given to you that was gleaned from law enforcement?
It looked good, except for there were 7 points that were obviously, they were labeled windows and they were obviously not in the position of the windows.
They're actually sort of in trees where the total station laser bounced off something different than what the person thought it was?
Yes, where they set up the total station at the T intersection of the sidewalk. They pointed it up at second-story window on the right side, and it went through the tree, and going through the tree it picked up a few branches. So there's 5 points or 6 points on the one side, and I believe 1 point on the left side that went through a tree. So you've got points in the computer that are just hanging in space, so it's easy to see that it's at the location of the tree and not to use it.
Were you able to address that or fix it in your software that you ended up using?
I didn't manipulate the data at all. I just used the other points that they had.
So in effect, just excise those out because they were obviously sort of in the way or errors?
Yes.
Did you, in addition to the motion capture suits, we'll talk about that in just a second, did you do any other measuring of the scene now that you're on scene?
I also had another piece of equipment. It's called a Matterport.
Please spell that, please.
M-A-T-T-E-R-P-O-R-T. It's a Matterport scanner. It also sets up on a tripod, and it has a little computer in it and some cameras. So it has one camera that takes photographs, and another camera will take infrared photos for distance purposes. So you set this up, and with the iPad interface, you can just hit scan, and it'll twirl around in 360, and it'll scan the area around the scanner, and you just walk it through the scene. So it captures all the little intricate parts of the scene, along with texture map of the photos.
What map, I'm sorry?
Texture map of the photos.
And how does that assist you in what you created in this case?
It was very helpful in getting the slope and the positioning of the buildings and the trees and the sidewalk.
Did that then make it even a more accurate rendition of the scene than the total station was able to give you?
Yes, it added to the total station data, and I verified the Matterport scanner with the total station data so that it all matched up.
It meshed pretty well so that what you came up with in your review matched the total station data?
Yes.
Did the Matterport then allow for a better graphic representation of the sloping that existed on the actual ground?
Yes.
And total station had not done that?
They didn't take very many, they didn't measure very many points. They mainly measured there's a couple metal drains and a sprinkler head or piece. They went around and measured those and the edge of the sidewalk and then the building, but they didn't do, in the location of the trees, but they didn't do really any measuring of the slope.
So did the Matterport then allow for a even more accurate rendition of the sloping of the ground in the area where the T intersection was, the area where the body, where Trayvon Martin's body was, and other points along the way?
Yes.
Mr. O'Mara, Mr. Shoemaker has been standing almost an hour. I thought that when you wanted him to stand at the podium that it was going to be a short presentation. Would you like to take a seat, sir?
How much longer? I'll be okay.
We're getting to the meat of it right now, and that's not going to, I have to have him review the animation for you and the pictures, so I'm going to have to drag him back down here in a moment, so I'm going to move it along.
Thank you.
So, you went to the scene, got everything that you needed to start working on what your project was, correct?
Correct.
So then what did you do with that information? Well, we were talking now again about the motion capture suits, who did them, and what frailties exist with having other people use the motion capture suits.
There was a couple volunteers from the your law office that put the suits on. Then as far as the timing for the second part of the scenario where they were on the ground, we used, or I used the audio from the 911 call for the timing of it, to time it with the shot of the gun.
Okay. Did you also have available to you John Good's police statements and I guess at that point deposition testimony regarding what he said he saw and what happened?
Yes, I was used for the their positioning.
Did you also have information available to you from a Miss Mora, M-O-R-A, a woman who said she saw George Zimmerman on top of Trayvon Martin some seconds after the shot?
Yes.
And did that assist you in the creation of your animation, putting the bodies where other witnesses saw them?
Yes.
Did you also then have, as you mentioned, what we now call the Lauer 911 audio, which has in it the shot and a matter of time before the shot itself?
Yes.
What did you also have? Whatever other information was available to you from the discovery?
There's also Ms. Lauer's police report statement.
And that included her statement that she first heard the altercation occur at the T intersection?
Yes.
You also had Jeremy Weinberg's information available to you and he corroborated that?
Yes, from the same location.
Now as we fast forward through this, you had created some poster graphics, we'll call them stills of the scene, and we'll get to those in just a minute, based upon that testimony as well?
Yes.
Did you most recently remove Mr. Weinberg's statement from one of those posters, since I advised you that he ended up not testifying here at trial.
Yes.
So along the way, and we'll get to it in just a minute, were you modifying the animation and the posters to come in line with actual trial testimony?
Yes.
At least as it was disclosed to you by me or on my behalf?
Yes, to get the most up-to-date, accurate representation of it.
Okay. And were you in fact able to create an animation based upon the information available to you?
Yes.
Before we view that, let's just go over the sources of that information. You had testified a moment ago that you had seen discovery, correct?
Correct.
That's what we call it here, and that's including witness statements, depositions, and other information like autopsies and police reports, correct?
Correct.
And did you also have available to you diagrams made by the witnesses, such as John Good did a diagram showing stick figures with certain placement of bodies?
Yes.
And all the other information within the discovery?
Correct.
I know that you don't know the full answer to this question, but did you get a lot of information from the defense, including all the witness statements, police reports, and diagrams that you felt were necessary to create your animation?
Yes, I did.
You didn't receive a lot of information that was extraneous or unnecessary in creating your animation, but that you wanted to review it to see if it was relevant?
Yes.
You also then have conversations with me or people on my behalf regarding the creation of the animation?
Correct.
What other sources of information did you have in order to come up with the animation and the posters that you did?
Pretty much everything that you mentioned.
Anything else besides that? The discovery itself and conversations with me?
My going to the scene and scanning the scene, photographing the scene, doing the motion capture.
Was there anything that you would like to have had to assist you in creating the posters and the animation that was not available to you in this case?
I believe I had everything that I needed to create the scene.
I mean, aside from a video of the whole event or something that would... Okay. Then I'm going to ask you to present the animation you created. We'll talk about it, but let me try one more time for a moment to see if we can get this projected to cooperate, because it's going to look a lot better there.
It was working yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course it's working. Yes. It's showing up on the display screen.
T, do we need to get Victor in here?
We'll need it sometime during the day, so we'll just get it fixed now and have it go later. Well, we could, but we're going to need it.
Well, they can fix it during lunch. I still have a jury sitting back there now for an hour.
Okay, let's try it.
I had not anticipated that we were going to take this time, so if you'll please bring it up to the bench and I'll look at it from there. I can.
Do you need police, fire, medical? Maybe both, I'm not sure. There's just someone screaming outside. Okay, what's the address of it here? Police, is this an employee like Tom's in Sanford? Yeah. Okay, and is it a male or female? It sounds like a male. And you don't know why? I don't know why. I think they're yelling help, but I don't know. Just send someone quick, say stop. Does he look hurt to you? I can't see him. I don't want to go out there. I don't know what's going on. So they're sending. So you think he's yelling help? Yes. All right. What is your? There's gunshots. You just heard gunshots? Yes. How many? There's one. Jimmy, get down. No, come here. Is he no longer yelling?
Tape continues, but the animation doesn't.
I don't know.
So I don't think you need to hear that.
Jeremy, get in here now.
Now, as you're at the bench, there are the posters, which is another thing that he created.
These are the new ones?
Some of them are new. We took out Weinberg, for example.
Still didn't get this.
These are the new ones. I don't know if you want testimony at the bench, just so he can at least
If
identify
he's
what
going
they
to show
are.
them to me, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's go through this, and I may question you about the animation in a minute, but if you would, just advise the court what this is, first of all, and how it was created.
This was created from a still image from the 3D model that I created for the animation. It's to explain the location of the markers and the witnesses.
And just so I'm clear, where'd you get the markings, where you have the markers, how did you identify them and put them at that particular location?
It's straight from the total station data.
Okay.
I not only used total station data, but they also had a flat 2D illustration of the scenes from their data.
And that was incorporated as well?
Yes, so the location of these markers are exactly where they're marked on that.
Okay, next slide.
It's basically the same thing. just
Same thing, different view.
Different view.
Next slide.
This one's to show the slope.
And again, that came more from the Matterport than the total station?
It's from the Matterport, but it's verified with the total station. The different areas where the concrete, the sprinkler and the drain heads, they matched up with the Matterport. So I was able to verify the slope.
But this does give you a better slope than the total station alone would give you? A better rendition of the slope?
Correct. They don't, on their total station, they just had sidewalk marked and those
Right. They did not run like
drains marked.
They did not run like a bunch of points on the ground, which would have given you the slope, and that's what you did with Matterport?
Yes.
Okay, next one.
Then this is just to show photographs from discovery of what was at those markers.
The flashlights and where they were found.
Yes.
Okay, next one. Again, different parts of different items, where they were located, and for example, top left-hand corner is the picture that you just imported from the picture we gave you.
Yes.
Bottom left is the picture from the medical examiner with the Mr. Martin's wet pants.
Yes, from the scene.
Okay, then the cartridge case. at the bottom,
Yes,
and then the cell phone.
yes.
Okay. And in the middle?
This?
Yes.
That's from the point of view of Mr. Good.
Oh, and you can see right behind the pictures on the left is Mr. Good's head in
You can
effect?
see it's here, right back there.
And
And
that's-
it's taken with a 50 millimeter lens in the software. So that is what most closely resembles what a person will see.
Okay. And there's a line going sort of right above the cartridge case. Is that a distance measurement from what to what?
The edge of the porch concrete to the marker number 8.
Number 8. And when you say 50 millimeter, that's the way the human eye looks at an event? It's about 49 or 50 millimeters?
Exact measurement, I believe, is 49.5, but it's just rounded off to 50.
So you look at, this is a perspective that one would see as a human's looking at it through a human's eyes?
Yes, if you were standing there, that's how they would appear if you were
That's the
standing.
perspective.
Perspective, yes.
Okay, next one.
This is going back to the T intersection.
And this was the one where we initially had Mr. Weinberg on it as well. He didn't testify, so we just have Ms. Lauer. I think that's a trial testimony as to where she thought the altercation occurred.
Yes. So it's an explanation of why I placed him there. So it's a,
Okay.
And that is John Good's head off there to the left as sort of a focus point.
yes,
And that again is a 50 millimeter presentation
yes,
with the distance included.
yes,
And that states what John Good testified to at trial regarding the what he saw and the people's descriptions.
yes, yes.
Next one. And that's Ms. Morris' testimony from trial as to what she saw when she looked out around her column.
Yes,
Is that the column on the right-hand side?
yes, there's a aerial map here showing where her condo is.
And is that also a perspective of what she would see from her location?
Yes, it's a 50 millimeter lens. Also in all these photographs, I didn't try to reconstruct the lighting because it's more important to see detail.
Okay. Obviously, if I was Ms. Moore looking at this, the lighting was much darker back then, correct?
Correct.
So that's one frailty, if you will, of the presentation of the poster, is because if the lighting was what it was at night, almost nothing could be seen. As far as your poster presentation?
The jury would have a hard time seeing detail.
Is that the last one?
Yes.
Yeah. Want to have a moment, John?
Off the record, I think the problem they're having is with the Apple computer interaction, and they're going to check it out over lunch.
We'll change it out to a Mac, to a PC, and get this presentation on a PC should whatever part
Okay.
of it be
Do you have
allowed.
any other questions?
Just very briefly, which is, so you have been doing this type of graphic and animation work and presenting to court for the past 13 years or so?
Yes.
And I think you testified that your work has not ever been disqualified or disallowed in a court?
Correct.
Tell me your awareness of the industry of animation and other people who do this type of work.
The type of work that I do, I'm the only one in the United States with a wireless motion capture suit, so I'm unique in that way.
There are other people who use similar motion capture suits, those being the older style, the one with the balls, correct?
I believe some reconstruction are using it, but it's really very rare that you find a reconstruction that has a motion capture suit, whether it's the balls or the wireless.
The area of reconstruction of events, though, you've been involved in that for how long?
13 years.
And this type of work is also accepted, is it not, in the entertainment community, as we've talked about?
Yes.
And that's used, as we talked about, in both video games and in motion pictures, such as Avatar and Iron Man?
Yes.
And this software that you utilize, tell the court where that fits into the industry of reconstruction of events.
The 3D software I use or the ARIS 360?
Either as a compendium or individually?
It's just one of the key elements that I use in reconstructing.
And how long has that software been around?
Luxology has been around probably 4 years, but I believe 4. It started out as version 201. They're up to 701 now, so it's been around for a while.
Okay. And do you ever attend seminars or any type of conventions where other reconstructionists interact or talk about information in regard to this industry?
Yes. Well, the software actually has a users group that gets together, the Moto software, and I've given presentations there on the work that I do.
How often do you give presentations to that group?
I've just presented to them once.
Okay. And in that user group, is that made up of the people who use this software on an ongoing basis?
Yes.
We're talking about the ARIS 360 now?
No, that is the Moto software.
I'm sorry.
There's a group, the ARIS 360 gets together with a webinar every Friday.
Okay. And do you keep up on that part of the industry, the interaction between other people who use this software?
Yes.
And is this software one of the softwares that is accepted in the community of people who create animations or recreate scenes, whether it be for accident reconstruction or other types of recreations?
Yes. The Highway Patrol uses, I think there's 3 basic kinds of software that is used for car accident and accident or crime scene reconstruction for the police departments, which is visual statement, ARIS 360, and there's another software which is called Crime Time or something like that. That's what Sanford Police uses on theirs.
Is the software then you use some of the most up-to-date and current software that's available for this type of work?
Yes, ARIS 360 and Visual Statement are the industry standard for accident and crime scene reconstruction.
And do your contemporaries who do work similar to yours, though they may not have the suits that you have, use this type of software to do their work?
Some of them. It's mostly used in police departments for their reconstruction.
The ARIS 360 or the Moto or?
Probably 80% of ARIS 360's customers, I've asked them, they said 80% are police departments. The rest are accident reconstructionists like myself or crime scene reconstructionists or private investigators.
And do you interact with these people, including law enforcement, on these user group meetings that you have?
Yes, you can ask questions, and if you have anything coming up from the week, you can get it answered at the end of the week.
Within the context then of accident reconstructionists and animators, is this software then the type of software which is used in that industry?
Yes, mine's kind of like cutting edge.
Yours is more advanced, correct?
Yes.
And even you say that you're the only one who uses the new style of motion suits for your type of work, correct?
Correct.
They are used, however, again, in the entertainment industry much more so, correct?
Correct. They're also used in, like I mentioned, medical rehabilitation.
Is any limitation to their availability based upon their expense?
Yes.
And they're still quite expensive?
Yes.
No further questions, John?
Who's Ross?
Judge, I could ask for a 5-minute break before we do that, and I would also ask the witness to just assume the stand.
We can have a 5-minute recess, but we'll be in recess for 5 minutes. And when we come back, Mr. Shoemaker, if you please take the stand.
County, Solano County, Solano, Yolo County, San Francisco County, Riverside County, Stanislaus County, Stanislaus, San Mateo, Santa Clara, Orange County, Santa Cruz, and El Dorado.
Have you ever testified in Florida before?
No.
Have you testified outside of California before?
No.
How long have you actually had the motion suits that you talked about a moment ago?
Since 2008.
And in those counties that you've testified, those counties, did you testify in each one of those counties, or was your information you created presented in those counties?
Information that it was both.
Okay.
My information was through either being as an expert witness testifying in court or a declaration, because sometimes the material that I create can be testified to by another expert, like a ballistic expert or a medical expert. Or
Do I take it that in certain cases you might create the animation or the graphic, and then that is admitted by what you call declaration, we may call affidavit, such that the underlying graphic is brought to court even without you having to come in live and testify? Graphic presentation, whether it's an animation or poster type presentations?
yes,
And are we now talking about the spectrum of murder cases and aggravated batteries? I mean, do you know the charges, or are you just told the information?
sometimes I've been told more detail. Sometimes I'm just given the evidence and I do creation from the evidence.
Within that context, let's focus on the 59 cases. How much or what percentage of that would you have worked on behalf of the defense, and what percentage on behalf of the prosecution?
100% on the defense, but that doesn't, some of that has also to do with defense of police officers in police officer-involved shootings.
And if you would explain to the court what you mean by that and what cases you handled in that regard.
If the Department of Justice has a police officer that is, a civil case is brought against him, or a shooting occurred, then I've done work with them on doing a reconstructions on that, also assisting them in court in the presentation of their material.
Okay. Again, focusing for a moment on the criminal cases, have you actually presented testimony in court in any of those 59 cases?
Yes, in about 8, presented personally, or had my material presented?
As the material is presented.
I don't have it on here.
I
need it.
Command towel would be so nice, just let us use what seems to be the only copy in the courtroom,
That's the front of our area is highlighted, but I don't mind.
if you don't mind. Thank you very much. If that assists you, then tell us the type cases in the courtrooms that you have presented that work in.
I've worked on 59 criminal trials so far, 21 civil trials, and I've done declaration or testified in 20 of those.
Okay. So approximately 100 presentations, whether by declaration or testimony?
Oh, 59 was the total, or
Oh, I'm
59 plus 21 civil.
Okay. If you give the court then an overview of the type of criminal cases that you've been involved in.
Trying to figure out shooting incidents. I've worked with the Department of Justice in police officer involved shootings, stabbings. It varies quite a bit.
Okay. In each of those 59 cases then, did you take on the information that we've talked about, gather together data, and then make a...
Yes, I just speak to the accuracy of the creation.
Okay. Have you actually testified in court concerning the accuracy and the methods used to create the animations or the graphics?
Yes.
And if you would advise the court, as best you can, what counties first? And I'm going to ask you, to the best of your recall, what cases and types of cases you've testified to in court. You want to go through them one at a time, or however you want to best present that?
I don't have a listing of exactly which counties
Just from your memory, what cases have you testified to in court? What type of cases?
all the ones that I've testified to in court have been criminal
Okay.
trials.
So give the court then an example of some of the cases that you testified to and what animation you presented and what you testified to regarding it.
There was one in Placer County, it was about 4 months ago. I testified in that on doing the shooting reconstruction, and that was to determine the position of the person shot and the position of the person shooting, and then what order of the shots that occurred and what position they were in when they were hit.
And was that one of the examples you gave us a moment ago?
No, this is another example.
And did you testify in that court?
Yes.
Were you qualified as an expert in this area of the presentation presented after being qualified?
Yes, pretty much all 59.
Okay, maybe just give some flavor to the court as to what courts you presented to, and then we'll talk about whether or not actual testimony was required.
I've been qualified as an expert in Placer County, Alameda County. I've got
What was the first county?
Placer County,
Can you spell that?
Placer. I got about 16 counties here that,
And those are all in California, correct?
yes.
Okay. If you would, just for the record purposes, advise, when you're talking about the counties, are these counties in which the courts of that county have authorized you to testify as an expert? Where you've actually presented or had your information presented to a court where it was qualified to be good information to be presented?
All the courts where my information has been presented, it's all been qualified. It's never been denied.
If you would, list through the counties in California then, and do it slow enough so the court reporter can get it down, and there may be some need for spelling. Just want to make sure it's a record.
Okay, Placer County, Alameda County, Contra Costa County, San Bernardino County, Sacramento County, Los Angeles County, Napa County, Fresno